Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. So in today's head-to-head comparison, we're taking a look at two high-performance muscle cars. We have the Shelby GT500 and the Challenger SRT Hellcat. Now the GT500 is the top trim level for the Mustang. The SRT Hellcat is not. There's the jailbreak and the super stock, which do have more horsepower. However, this Hellcat is most similar to the GT500, so that is why I am comparing both of them. I'm also comparing them because we review a lot of muscle cars and we get a lot of questions, which one should you buy? I've made a previous comparison video that I'll link down in the description if you want to check that out. But today we are comparing these two high-performance muscle cars. For the GT500, these have an MSRP ranging between $70,000 and $112,000. Now that is a big difference, but on the GT500 you can get the carbon fiber track pack, which is almost a $20,000 option, which adds to that MSRP. The SRT Hellcat starts right around $80,000, so they can be similarly priced if you don't get that carbon fiber track package for the GT500. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at all the engine specs, the exteriors, the interiors, and then get both of these out on the road and come back with our final thoughts. And we're going to start off today's comparison with what powers the GT500. This has a 5.2 liter supercharged cross-plane crank V8 paired to a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission. That is the only transmission available. It pumps out 760 horsepower, 625 pound-feet of torque. That power is sent to the rear wheels. This weighs in right around 4,200 pounds. It'll do 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds with a top speed of 180 miles an hour. And it has a fuel capacity of 16 gallons. You'll expect to see around 12 miles per gallon in the city and 18 out on the highway. Now over on the SRT Hellcat, this has a 6.2 liter supercharged V8 paired to an 8-speed automatic or a 6-speed manual. So you do have the manual option. This pumps out 797 horsepower and 707 pound-feet of torque. That power is sent to the rear wheels. This weighs in right around 4,500 pounds. It'll do 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, so slightly slower because it does weigh more. However, it has a top speed of 203 miles an hour. And with a fuel capacity of 18.5 gallons, you'll expect to see around 13 miles per gallon in the city and 21 out on the highway. Now, as we move on to the exterior styling for this GT500, it definitely has a very distinctive front end, and this model even has these functional hood pins. So that dates back to older racing heritage and gives it a really cool look, but like I mentioned, they are functional, so you do have to push on those before you can open up the hood. So I'm glad that they're not just stuck on, and it gives it a pretty cool look. Now this also has a functional hood scoop, so that allows a lot more airflow to the engine. As you can tell with all of those slats, definitely awesome to have that for this performance-oriented muscle car. This model even has these stripes running down it. It features a really cool grille design with that hexagonal shape to it. Definitely very aggressive. This even has LED headlights, LED DRLs, which have a distinctive look. Now the turn signal is located right in the middle, so it is separate from that housing with some black trim running around them. I love the rest of the lines that run throughout this front end too. The Shelby badge is right in the middle of the grille. GT500 is spelled out in the gloss black section. Those stripes continue to the lower section as well. There's even plenty of cutouts in this mesh to provide a lot more cooling, so it's a very functional front end for this model. And then last up, Shelby is even in the lower diffuser, which is a great touch. Now over on the Hellcat, this has its own distinctive design with the very narrow and wide grille. This doesn't have LED headlights, however it does have LED DRLs and turn signals. There's even functional cutouts within both of those housings on each side to channel in more air to that engine to provide a lot more cooling, along with the cutouts in the grille and even these snorkels in the hood. So as you can tell, those are separate, but they are functional. And then there's even more mesh in the very lower section to provide a lot more cooling. And this lower splitter is massive, a lot larger than the GT500, which has a really nice design to it. Now as we move on to the side, this GT500 has a set of 20-inch wheels. They're 11 inches wide. This even has Brembo brakes with 6 pistons up front and 4 pistons in the rear. Now you can opt for the carbon fiber wheels, which is a part of that carbon fiber track pack. It has the blacked out mirrors with the integrated turn signal. As you can tell, there's more stripes running down the lower section of the door, as well as these side skirts, which have some contoured lines to them and are functional. They tie in nicely with that front spoiler. This has a great coupe-like design to it. The stripes run down the roof too. I love all of the lines that run down the side, There's one at the height of the door handle. This has another Shelby badge just behind the front tire. And then working our way to the side now on this Hellcat. This has a set of 20-inch wheels as well, finished off in matte black with the Brembo brakes too. Now this is the only wheel option for the Hellcat, so there's no carbon fiber wheels unless you go aftermarket. Very similar design to the GT500, however it is a little bit more boxy. This is a larger vehicle, as you'll see here later. Really nice lines running down the side, not as aggressive as the GT500, but gives it a great look, very proportional for this muscle car. And then last up for the rear on this GT500, this has a massive fixed wing with the stripes on the top of the trunk. This also has a backup camera, another Shelby badge right in the middle. You will not see a Ford logo on the exterior aside from up front on the windshield. It has the LED sequential design for the turn signals. There are no parking sensors for the rear of this. And then in the lower diffuser, it's finished off in gloss black. This has the active exhaust with the quad tip dual exhaust system. The reverse light is right in the middle too. And there's even some more heat extraction vents. Now for the rear end of the Hellcat, you can see SRT is on the fixed spoiler, which is a lot more subtle, but it gives it a great look. This also has a backup camera, parking sensors, the ovalish design for the taillights, which are LED, surrounded with all the gloss black, which you saw over on the GT500, and then it has the dual exhaust in the lower section. Now working our way to the interior, for the GT500, it definitely has a nice design to it. There's leather, brushed aluminum, all of your window controls, a little bit of storage, kind of a plain door panel, but it has everything that's functional that you need. And then looking at these seats now, these are Recaro bucket seats with the cutouts, the two-tone design. They have leather and alcantara, so it's a really nice sport bucket seat, very comfortable at the same time. And these are manual adjusting, so those controls are down on the side, as well as the bar up underneath to be able to slide this forwards and backwards. And then for the interior on the Hellcat, pretty similar to the GT500, very simple with some leather. There's some plastic trim in the upper section, a split design for the storage in the lower section, as well as some brush trim on that release handle. All of your window controls, side mirror adjustments, just like on the GT500. And then for this Hellcat, leather is not an option. So these are cloth seats, which I know a lot of people do complain about. SRT is right in the middle. It has a two-tone design to it. And these are power seats though, so that adjustment is down on the side to be able to move them forwards and backwards. But there is the manual adjustment to recline and incline. Now moving on to the gauge cluster for the GT500, it's pretty configurable with the LCD screen on the left side. The fixed miles per hour or the analog gauge is on that right side. There is a lot that you can go through. You can configure the exhaust, how you'd like this gauge cluster to appear depending on the driving mode that you are in. Over on the Hellcat, however, this has a lot more information to go through. There are 9 different tabs that you can go through. On the left and the right side, the tach and the miles per hour are fixed. And we have this digital screen in the middle, as you're seeing right now, going through a lot of information. There's even a performance tab that'll go through 0 to 60, 0 to 100, all of your braking, your G-force meter, and all of that information. So to be a factory vehicle that you can monitor all of this is very awesome to see. For the infotainment system on the GT500, this is a pretty simple layout. There's not a whole lot of information to go through. You have all of your fixed information in the lower section to go through all of your daily driving information, navigation settings, all of that information. So it's not too configurable, but for this type of vehicle, it gives you what you need, which I love to see. And then over on the Hellcat, you have a lot more info on this large touchscreen system. As you saw with the gauge cluster, that was just touching the surface with what you can go through. There's the SRT mode where you can go through a lot more performance information. You can adjust everything just depending on how you like to drive, different driving modes. You can individually adjust all of that information too. This has heated seats, heated steering wheel, all of the normal information you can configure, even the performance pages as well, where you can monitor even more of that info that you saw in the gauge cluster. So I love how you can have all of that. And then as far as back seats go for both of these muscle cars, you're not really buying these as a full 4 or 5 seater, but if you do need to use these back seats, I am 5'10", as you can tell. I do have a little bit of room. Now my head is pretty crammed in this GT500, so I'm just riding around town if I were to be in the back. You're not going on long trips or anything like that. But you can also use this for additional storage space because the seats do fold down. So if this is your only vehicle, you have a little bit more usability and practicality. Now on the Hellcat, this is actually a 5-seater. That is how much bigger this is compared to the GT500. And I could actually ride comfortably in the back for a good amount of time. Unlike the GT500, I do have a good amount of room for my head. It is still crammed though. It's not like a full 4-door vehicle, but I am a little bit more upright. I'm not hunched over. So you could have 5 people in your Hellcat. For the performance of this muscle car, very practical to see. You could have 5 people in here. And moving on to the trunk space now, I love that the GT500 has a button up underneath, so you don't even have to grab your key fob to gain access. Now this has an ample amount of room for this vehicle. I like that amount of space. Like I mentioned earlier, with the back seats down, you have a lot of usable space. Even up underneath the floor, you can see there's a little bit more storage space where you could fit a spare tire if you needed to. However, you can use that for additional storage as well. And then over on the Hellcat, it has a button in the back too. Again, very practical to have. Now I will say for the Hellcat, it has a larger interior trunk space, but it does have a smaller entry and exit way, which does make it a little difficult for larger items. But once you get them in with the back seats down, you have a lot more space, and you cannot fit a spare up underneath. There's the battery, a little bit of storage, and an inflator kit where you could store some extra items if you need to. But again, very practical for this muscle car. I kind of do wish that it offered a manual, but you just can't beat how quick these shifts are. So we're gonna drop it down. We're just in normal mode at the moment. Those are incredibly quick. They are very responsive, but that was in normal mode. We're gonna go up into sport mode for all of the suspension as well as the steering. We're just gonna put it all into the sport mode. I'm not gonna go into track mode at the moment, but we have everything in sport mode. It's gonna get a little bit loud. Wow, I'm not doing anything crazy. I am definitely short shifting because this is not my vehicle, but wow. And switching to the POV angle now, before we get out on the road, let's just talk about visibility. So over this right shoulder here, you can see we have a very thin pillar, so you can see out of that window if you need to. You have your side mirror, of course. Over my left side here, there's a little bit of a pillar there, but it's really not all that bad. You have your other side mirror too, so you can easily see around this entire vehicle, and then we'll give it a little bit of gas. This is definitely a quick vehicle, and I'm not bringing it to its full potential by any means, but this is so much fun to drive. I feel like this particular model has an aftermarket exhaust on it because it is much louder than I'm used to. You still get that supercharger whine, which I can't get over. Every time I drive one of these Dodges, the supercharger whine is the coolest sounding noise that you could possibly have, especially when you pair it with the exhaust note that V8 engine makes. And so I'm gonna put it into the track setting with what it's going to automatically configure for me. And a quick mild acceleration from third gear there. As we switch over to the POV angle now, quick look at visibility over this side so you can get a perspective from this angle. Same with over my left shoulder there. I'm sure you can hear that supercharger whine. Does not get old. And we'll do one last acceleration for today's video. Here we go. And we are up to speed just like that. And so now coming back to final thoughts between the Shelby GT500 and the Challenger SRT Hellcat. Now personally, I do like muscle cars. I would never own one. However, I have had a lot of seat time behind the wheel of both of these muscle cars, and personally, I think I would go with the GT500. Now the only thing that is stopping me from that is the fact that there's no manual transmission offered for the GT500. So for that reason alone, I would switch over to the SRT Hellcat. However, that's a big vehicle. I don't like how big it is for a two-door vehicle. It is massive. If that's your only vehicle, you're looking for that amount of space, and it's something where you're going to be using those back seats, then I would go for the SRT Hellcat because it has that amount of room. The GT500 is going to be a lot more nimble, and that 7-speed dual clutch is very quick. So I do like that it actually has a good transmission, even though it doesn't have 3 pedals. So I would go back to the GT500 because of how more nimble it is. It weighs less, it's quicker to 60, even though it has less horsepower. That 300-pound difference with the Hellcat slows it down. So the GT500 is quicker, has a lower top speed, which really isn't that important. You're not going to be using that top speed very often, if ever. And so I think I would go with the GT500. But both of them are very, very fun to drive. I love the supercharger whine that the Challengers have. You just can't get over that. But the GT500 has the active exhaust, so you have different modes depending on how you'd like to drive. So comment down below, which muscle car would you go with? They're both very practical. If it's your only vehicle, you could absolutely daily drive both of these. So if you're looking for that top of the line performance trim level, these are something that you can daily drive. You can go to the grocery store, do whatever you need. They're going to be a little small if you're packing in larger items, but if that's not something that you need to do, or you have a vehicle you can rent or something like that, you can absolutely make this a daily driving, performance-oriented muscle car that you can take to the track. Both of these are ready to go from the factory. Once you break them in, you have a lot of horsepower at your right foot. So comment down below, which one would you take and why? And I hope you enjoyed today's comparison with the Shelby GT500 and the Challenger SRT Hellcat. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a huge thumbs up. Consider smashing that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with our daily uploads. And I will see you all in the next video.